Well, hi everybody. We're back at the Red Barn. My name is Tom Ribbecke. We're at my Red Barn in Healdsburg, where my shop is located, and I have this is the fourth edition of this show, whatever it is that we've created. I have my partner in crime, Bobby Vega, here with me, the co-host and carrying on partner, and we have the great Larry Robinson as our guest today. And I try not to say the great Larry Robinson too much because it might go to his head, but. Anyways, we're here today because we're having a lot of folks responding to our new show, and as a matter of fact, we're talking now about what to call a bloody show. Should it be, you know, Creative Bastards, which seems to be Gérard, our fantastic video. And I have to take this moment to say thank you to Gérard because his work has been spectacular, and we really appreciate it. Everything he's done.
I was going to thank you, Gérard.
Thank you, Gérard.
Thank you, Gérard.
So if you have an idea, looking at the names that we're tossing out, you have an idea you like, let us know. Write back to us. Comment on the YouTube videos, please, because we're looking for all the feedback we can get about this show. So far it's been Creativity 360, you know, Guitar Talk, and Guitar, you know, whatever. So let us know what you think and give us some feedback. Tell us what we should be doing.
The Tom and Bobby Show.
Tom and Bobby Show, or Bobby and Tom Show, which I think is, you know, a little better. But in any case, here we are, and delighted to be here. And today, I have not only the honor of having a long association with Larry and his fantastic work. If you haven't seen his work, I consider him to be, and sure I'll take some shots for this, but the finest artistic inlay guy out there. There are very few people I'd put in the same category as him. You know, there really isn't anybody in his category. He's defined his own genre because of the art and the vision and the pathos of his work, which is immediately present. I've also been the benefit of having him collaborate with me, which has been a huge delight for me over the years. So, you know, welcome to the Crazy Show.
Well, thanks.
Also, we play together in a band called the Bench Dogs, so
oh,
we
yes.
see each other.
That is the Crazy Show.
And that's the other Crazy Show. So we play music together, we create together, and what better guest? So, you know, tell us a little bit about your background, you know, how you got to California. So start beginning of your crazoid career. You know?
Well, once I was a little tiny baby. Not that far back?
That's
okay.
You know,
I got out of high school. When I got out of high school, I didn't have any idea of what I wanted to do or who I wanted to be, and I had been playing guitar for just several years at that point and didn't even consider a career in anything to do with guitars. So after I got out of high school, I went to an electronics school, which basically taught me how to get my first-class FCC license. And I did that for about 3 weeks after I got my license and could not stand television or radio. So
come in Rangoon.
Yeah, exactly. So I bailed on that job, and then I drove school bus for a while, and you know, had a bunch of different low-end, no-end jobs, and finally decided to go to a classical guitar conservatory in Hartford, Connecticut, because I had been taking classical lessons for a while, and I thought, well, that's sort of school. My parents will be pleased. And the guy that I hired to build my guitar had just moved into the area, and this was back in Connecticut, and the Ovation factory was nearby. All I knew of at that point in my life was factory-made guitars. I didn't realize that people could actually build guitars themselves. And this guy had moved into the next town over and was advertising that he was building classical guitars for $300, Brazilian rosewood back and sides. And I thought, wow, that's a lot of money. And back then it was a lot of money, you know. And I gave him the $300, and over the course of the summer I kept trying to worm my way into his shop to find out what he was doing on it, because my deadline was coming closer to go to school. And I'd go over there and he wouldn't have done anything, and I'd say, well, how do you do this? How do you do that? Well, eventually, by the end of the summer, I had built the entire guitar myself. And I had it, and I was ready to go to school. I had about a week left, and he goes, wow, you did a good job on that. How would you like to work for me? And I went, what do you mean? And he says, well, you would be my apprentice in a traditional European sense, in that you would live with me and my family, and I would pay you $0.
And keep you in the basement and sell food down there.
You know, sand and sweep and stuff like that. And he says, but I'll teach you everything I know about building guitars. So I immediately went and got my deposit back from the school, and I stayed with him for 3 years, and then I came out to California with $60 in my pocket. I hitched up through New Hampshire and all the way across Canada and came back down and got into California to visit a friend of mine in San Francisco who was going to school. And I ran out of money while I was in San Francisco, so for several weeks I was walking, couldn't afford the 25 cents for the Muni bus, which is, you know, how cheap it was back then.
Takes me back, boy.
And I had to walk from the Panhandle of Golden Gate Park down to South of Market twice a week to give plasma for $7 a shot.
I think
and
they're paying more now.
That was they're not paying anything now. Last week I had to go down and try it again.
Wow.
No. So I was basically flat broke, and I just went to every guitar place in the city trying to find a job as a repairman. And the first place that hired me was this place called Chickens That Sing on the corner of Haight and Ashbury Streets.
I remember that.
This was in 1975.
Eclectic bunch of characters
Yeah,
in that place.
Doug Rumian was...
I don't remember their names, but I remember that.
I remember helping the junkies out of the doorway to get into the store.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you know.
Well, I actually didn't have to work there. This repairman, Doug Rumian, had a shop elsewhere in the city, but they hired me, and for 4 days I actually worked at Chickens That Sing doing repairs. But on the 5th day, I got a call from this place called Alembic Guitars, which the only time I had ever heard of them previous to that was I had seen a picture of Jack Cassidy's #1 Alembic bass. There's a little tiny picture in Guitar Player when I was still in high school, and I just went, that has got to be the most awesome thing I've ever seen in my life. And I never expected to be plunked down in the middle of that whole situation, which I was. They said, we don't have a shop, we don't have the factory in San Francisco, you'd have to come up to Cotati. And I said, where's that? And the next thing I knew, I was sleeping in a field across the street. The night before my first day there, I got plugged into this job. Somebody else was leaving. I got plugged in by Rick Turner and worked 13 hours my first day. And when he found out I was living in the field across the street, he goes, oh, why don't you stay here in the setup room? And the setup room had probably $50,000 worth of completed instruments. They didn't know me from Adam. And I just thought, this is way different from New England. This never would have happened in New England. So I worked for Alembic for 4 years, and I lived with one of the original woodworkers and guitar makers at Alembic. The first two actual woodworkers and guitar makers at Alembic were Rick Turner and Frank Fuller.
Oh, Frank.
And Rick has, you know, obviously made quite a name for himself, and Frank is a very, very talented guy and a very good friend, and I ended up living with him and his 2 children for several years before that we moved out of that situation. But he's been my friend ever since, and he's a fantastic guitar builder. He doesn't do too much of it anymore, but he's just a really amazing guy, and I just want to say thank you, Frank, for taking me in when you did. And
just as an anecdotal, you know, addition to what Larry's talking about, we've all known Frank, most of us, for many, many years, and Frank is we call him the Forrest Gump of the guitar business, because every time some new great innovation occurs, Frank is like standing in the corner and says, hey, let's try this. And he, you know, then it happens, and nobody ever hears from him. We're going to get Frank on the show, I think, because he's a character and a half. We all love him dearly.
And he doesn't get enough credit for what he's done.
He doesn't get enough credit. And he's really been one of those guys who, the army of people who have pushed this whole thing forward.
Yeah.
You know? Anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but...
That's about it. After Alembic, I quit there in 1979, and then I went to work for the original incarnation of Turner Guitars when it was in Ignacio, California, for about 1.5 years. It was me and Rick and his brother-in-law, Bill, making guitars. And all I remember about that place was that Owsley had his tricked out MG sitting in the middle of the shop. Had like 15 different kinds of natural sheep's wool carpeting in it and all these different gauges on everything, and he was just a total character. And Rick quit that after about 1.5 years. He moved down to Los Angeles, so I was still looking around for jobs, and then I got a job with Modulus Graphite in San Francisco, and I commuted for a couple of years, which was really pretty horrendous.
Wow.
But when I finished working at Modulus, I decided I'd had enough of the commute, and I just decided to go into work for myself. And I've been doing, since 1984, I've been doing just mostly inlays.
Was Modulus, was that Jeff Gould?
Jeff Gould, yeah.
And was that on Folsom?
Folsom and 4th, yeah.
The original Stars Guitars, right across the street from
in the same
cool
building
stuff.
with Stars Guitars,
Right.
and Mike Tobias was in there building basses.
No,
and
you're across the street.
At
It was
the Automat?
CBS, well, it was
And David
CBS,
Rubinson,
it was CBS
yeah.
before it was the Automat.
and right next door was Studio Instrument Rentals.
Sorry, I rented it.
Yeah.
That's right.
Remember
I used to
that
sit
place.
in there on the workbench, and right the Studio Instrument Rentals had its wall, a common wall between us.
Hear bangers.
And Santana would be in there.
Santana, yeah.
Santana would be in there auditioning new bass players, and you'd hear the same song for about 5 hours, you know, and different next, you know.
You know, one of the great memories I have of rehearsing next to Santana was hearing him do the same phrase again and again and again and again. You know, it made it really apparent to me just how hard everybody was working on that music.
You want to get it right. You've got to get it right with that stuff.
It was really something.
Yeah,
Pays off.
Wax on, wax off.
Wax
No.
So anyway, since 1984, I've been doing just inlay work, and occasionally I'll build a guitar, but nobody asks me to build the ones that I build. I build them because I have a pressing need to try something new technique-wise that I can't get a customer to pay me for, or don't want to have anybody paying me for until I've actually made sure it works. And
well, you know, one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on is not only our great association. I also want to make mention of the fact that Larry plays bass like he inlays. Everything is exactly where it should be. So working with him is really a great thrill because I always can count on his sense of timing. But and that's not always something you can count on with people. But you know, Larry's writing another book. He's already written a great book on inlay. And when he mentioned this to me a little while ago, it was really about what this show is about. It's about the inner fire. You said you knew you had to do this. You keep doing it. You know, what makes us keep inlaying things with creating art. This is at the root of all for me, and what I'm so fascinated with the kind of characters who populate not only music but all the arts. Because we would do this whether we were getting paid or not for the most part. We'd have to get paid and take care of our families, but that inner mounting flame that drives you to continue to do this, and it separates you from some of the other great inlay artists out there, you know, and to me that's still the underlying fascinating thing. You're quietly sitting in your very humble, quiet shop. You don't have a lot of visitors out there. It's kind of an honor to get to see your shop or to be.
I'm pretty much of a hermit, yeah.
And, you know, you do very amazing things. You know, we see these incredible things that Larry brings on Thursday nights, our rehearsal night. And we're so blasé at this point. You know, I also have the great David Marks, the great visual artist in that band, and Chet Connick, a guy who also has a history of building instruments that go back. So we constantly experience this. You know, I never want to get to the point where I don't really appreciate the level of it, but it's not so much, like I say, it's the vision of whatever it is that you're creating that really makes me want to have you collaborate on my instruments. It's not that you can inlay stuff. It's not that I can inlay stuff, but there's something incredibly deeply artistic about what drives you and his creation. So his book, which is called The Invisible Line.
The new one is called The Invisible Line, the Where Craft Becomes Art. That's the working title. I don't know if that's what's going to actually end up happening with it or not, but
that's where the rubber meets the road. You know, that's really where the rubber meets the road in all of this work. You know, and your first book was really about, you know, a lot of inlay, some technique, your beautiful plates, color plates, and how your approach, and you know, looking at your history of that. This book is really focused a little bit differently. You know.
Well, I have 7 people that are going to be in on this book, including Mr. Tom Ribbecke here. Everybody's going to write their own section and have their own photographs of their own work, and it's going to be your own opinions, my own opinion, and several other opinions about what happens when craft becomes so good that it becomes art. I mean, where is that line? And everybody's got their own opinion on it, and we shouldn't just leave it up to the so-called professionals who have their PhDs and whatever else they have. I mean,
when I see it, it just makes the hair on my arm raise, because the guitar has dimension, you know, in the lines, and then when your art comes on with it, it gets more 3D, and you just go, and I get scared to play them. They're so beautiful after that, but I want to play them because they're actual instruments, not products.
Well, the idea is to have something visual as well as the oral part of the music.
No,
you know, it's another dimension to it. But it's something that I used to tell customers, if you're going to the NAMM show, you're going to see 300 guitar makers there every year. And the next year you're going to see 300 guitar makers there, but 50% of them are going to be not the same ones. And since most guitars look like most other guitars, you're going to want to have something that makes people see it across the room, and they're going to go, oh, I have to get closer and see what that is. And the idea about the inlays is to get closer and closer and see more things open up. It's like going down inside an atom and seeing more and more things the closer you get to the center.
And what I see with yours, though, is that it has more depth of story, of meaning, of somebody that's connected with the instrument, and then who the instrument's for, right? So it constantly goes this way. So you find out who is for the story is, you put your heart and soul with his heart and soul, and then the person who's actually the instrument is going to be. and then it really just takes on this other life.
Oh, thanks.
That's what I see.
From my point of view, the best ones take on the aspects of knowing, I know who the guitar maker is and their personality and what they build and what I need to have out of it, and a little bit about the customer or a lot about the customer, and all those three things have to meet in order to make the magic.
And that's what I see, because the ones I've seen are special. Like where see my hairline,
Yeah.
it has this dimension where it goes. Yeah, no, I'm not.
Holy crap, he's got
Chicken
goosebumps.
skin, man.
No, it's not. I mean, it is what it is, and that's without trying to be deep or odd. That's how it lines up that way. You know,
Well,
where there's a chemistry.
That's what we all try for it. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Well,
sometimes
the ones
it gets
I've
pretty
seen.
damn close, and sometimes it gets over the line.
No, that's right.
But for me, it's about the process. Once something is finished for me, it's not that I lose interest in it, but I don't have as much of an emotional involvement with it as I do when I'm actually making
Of course. It's just like playing music, because what happens is that once you start a song, you should finish it, and now it's gone. Now on to the next one.
Yeah.
But while you're there in that moment, then you put what you have into it. But you have to be able to set it free. But that's what I see when I see your guys' collaboration, and then all of a sudden, I've been fortunate enough to see the person that the instrument was for, see the person who was building the instrument, and then the other part of the art of your part of it, and when it comes together in the dimension of the depth of that.
Yeah, I like that part too.
That's the part that a lot of people won't get to see our experience. So if you are able to do that, it's money can't buy it. I mean, there's a price with everything, but it's really it's another level of something else. It's a different high that no ride like it.
That's for sure.
It's the alchemy and the creative magic. You know, it's a little bit like when you made me think of the word musical, which you really made me, I think I mentioned this before, made me come back to in my life. Always is the most important thing about building an instrument. And then I look at your work, and it always means to me that I have to exceed what I've done before. But underneath it all is this storytelling phenomena.
Yeah.
You know, you need to, well, you pointed this right out. You need to tell a story with this work. And see, when I look at your work, I see a story. I don't see this with a lot of stuff. You know, there are great inlay artists. We can't not mention the great Grit Laskin and the great Rene Carnes, Harvey Leach. Some great artists, all in their own right. And I love all of them for different reasons. And in your case, it's this deep, magical cosmos. The other thing about your knowledge of, you have an encyclopedic knowledge of culture and of history. And, you know, you can talk about technique, which relates not just to, say, I remember years ago talking to me about half Chinese rope technique with doing an inlay wire. And I don't forget the things you tell me about, but this was interesting because your unique spin on it was less about the craft and what you were going to do with it, you know, and this is really why I want to keep this show focused on that sort of thing, you know, and I have some examples of your work sitting here.
Half the interest that I have in this is the research that I have to take in order to
I get
do
that.
something exactly for.
And you do that well because, that takes a quiet focus. And, it's it's a wonderful thing to be part of. I'm very honored, very lucky. This is just a quick thing that you had just done for us. And this is on an instrument that we are going to donate to help a veterans organization, actually abused children's organization. And it's called CASA. It's in Austin, Texas, in association with the Zoltan David Gallery. And my company is trying to do good things for folks, and so we asked you to do an interpretation, and you did this beautiful eagle. And hold it still, he said. And we're going to show some guitars that we're shooting separately, but I'm thinking that this is just a nice thing because we have them here. We'll show them. Keep rotating this and take a look at that. And this is a question of, this is how subtle Larry can be. And I'll show another one of the instruments that you and I have collaborated on. This is part of this incredible trio that I'm making. And this is quilted mahogany instrument, which you'll see this separately as well. But
it's amazing.
It's an amazing material, amazing everything. And then look at what Larry did on the headstock. And this is how we work together. I'll say to him, I never see a drawing before he does it. I say, I'd like you to do this. I'd like you to do the Vitruvian man with an X brace. And I'd like you to be holding the X brace. And this is what happens. And what's really beautiful about this is the slight incursion into the binding from the finger. This is the kind of thing that is so clever. It's like hearing a song and it makes you laugh because you hear somebody play a phrase, So, we'll show this in a little bit.
You have to make reference to the detailing on the body on this was done by a scrimshander up in Oregon named
absolutely.
Bob Hergert, who is just mind-bogglingly good.
Another world.
With a little awl and a binocular microscope.
Yeah. But that's why it has that extra piece of chicken.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at all.
You know,
I mean, it's
No, when you
ridiculous.
collaborate with people, you want to collaborate with the best people you possibly can.
But that's
because
what's so deep about
it's
all
like the
this.
Beatles,
It's
you know,
just- it's
individually, they're great.
Well, yeah.
Together, they were greater than the sum of their parts.
You know what I love about the Beatles? You go and listen to their tracks, and you hear them doubling one word on a lyric piece out of, you know, you listen to the track separated, and you hear them, one word is doubled by 4 times, you know, in the analog way of recording, and it's that same kind of thorough, beautiful approach to things. It just creates, I guess I'm an analog fan. Still, you know, you do what you do is analog, for God's sake.
Well,
what we all kind of do is, you know.
That's
But
true.
the way the attention to the detail of having the scrimshaw guy on top of this other thing,
Yeah.
the depth, you see, that's,
Sum total.
yeah, that's,
But you also have to let it go and let the other people do what they do without
well, of course.
interfering too much.
But
It's
a
just
lot
like
of people,
playing music.
well, a lot
you
of
know?
people don't know that. I mean, if you want to go hire somebody, if you tell them what to do, how can you find out what they do?
Yeah. You just
You
have to relax and just let it go.
Yeah, so and that's another thing that people have to get to. But until you get to it, you can talk about it till you're blue in the face.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen until.
You know, it makes me
happens.
think of all of the actions that we take. We're working on another project that's a creative project where we're doing a guitar where the theme will be more likely waves. And you'll see more about this in the upcoming shows. But the concept of that, you know, every time you create something, energy on the planet, you send it out there, that wave never goes away. That energy always flows, always flows. You know, it's just a beautiful thing. Oh, why don't you pick up that guitar? Let's take a look at that. This Larry brought one of his...
Speaking of the Vitruvian Man,
This is speaking of the Vitruvian Man. We have his big brother here. And this is from the great Steve Klein's workshop. And we'll also be doing some spinning of guitars and some much more close, accurate work, but this is just fun to do while we're here. This is why, you know, I'm constantly, my jaw is constantly hanging when Larry does stuff. It's just stunning.
so this started taking place about 5 or 6 years ago. Steve had this customer in Italy who lives in Verona and is a Leonardo da Vinci fan and is also a scientist. So this guy is real, and a guitar collector who has a bunch of Steve Klein's guitars. So I actually came to Steve with this idea of a Leonardo da Vinci themed guitar many years ago, and he just immediately picked up on it. And as this is a spec guitar, nobody gets paid until it gets bought. And over time, you know, the neck is completely done on this. The body of the Vitruvian Man himself is done in mastodon tusk, 15,000-year-old extinct mastodon tusk. All the letters were cut out separately out of a sheet of copper, and there's silver bezel for the square and the circle. So we're almost done with this. I'm going to send this up to Oregon to Bob Hergert to have him do all the details on the body and whatnot. And the problem we're running into now is that the Lacey Act does not allow us to export Brazilian rosewood. So now we have to find a customer in the U.S. for it, even though this guy in Italy really wants it. So there's just one of the little roadblocks that we run into every once in a while in our craft, our art, and our business,
I might have a number
and our
for you.
lives. We're there.
check this guy out.
So there.
There's a guy, yeah.
So anyway, that's one. You know, these art guitars, they're kind of they take place in those alpha state, morning, early, half awake dream states where all of a sudden I can see everything that's going to be on the instrument. I know pretty much exactly what I want to do. It may take another 10 years to get it to the point where it's finished, but I try not to deviate too much from those deep consciousness revelations that sometimes happen.
See, mine happened at 3 in the morning,
Yeah.
and you know, everybody's got their special time when nobody else can get in, and things go bump in the night. You know, it's fantastic. See, I see stuff like this, and it just...
I have another one that took place over quite a few years. This is I call this Meet the Beatles. And originally it was going to be tropical fish. I wanted to have layers of plexiglass, and I had inlays of fish so that you could turn it a little bit and you could see the dimension, the 3-dimension aspect of it. And as I got closer and closer, I finally realized that these beetles from all over the world, Coleoptera, were an ideal use of the coloration that I wanted to have. There isn't an ounce of wood in this guitar. The neck is graphite, carbon graphite. I made the original master for this neck and the mold back in the early 80s when I was working for Modulus Graphite. And the body is poured polyester resin. There's a 9-day pour. There's about 7 or 8 layers in here. And the beetles came from all over the world from different beetle farms. They actually have beetle farms. And there you have it. And there you have it. That's all there is to it. At first I was a little leery because I thought, oh, this doesn't have any wood in it. What's it going to sound like? And then I had 2 Telecaster playing fool friends who just played the shit out of this thing, and they just, it sounds really good. So
this beetle's looking at me weirdly. I'm a little concerned.
I'm sorry.
You know?
No, the first day, you know, I saw Larry and you had this guitar, and you looked at it and I said, wow, Meet the Beatles. And you said, that's the name of the
exactly
guitar.
it.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm waiting for the letter from Paul's lawyers. Can't use that.
Oh, well.
You know, it's, you know, where does this come from? It comes from some, you know, I always used to talk to Bobby about this, and I'd say, when it comes to people who are in this milieu, I would say it's kind of like living in a Harry Potter thing, because, you know, you see people and you can see this sort of artistic glow around that individual. It's, I call that sort of the, you know, sort of the, it's like you can tell the moguls from the people who have this 45-year worked hard on gift to turn themselves into these great intuitive physicists and artists. You know, this is just the most fascinating thing to me. Why would we continue to do this under all circumstances, no matter what we have to do? And we just do it. It's the best form of compulsive behavior, whether you're making music like you do, and all of the input you've given me over the years to do what I do. It's you know.
It's like dogs. They throw the stick, we bring it back.
We bring the stick back.
You know, it's like, that's what's happening.
I have my friend Kendrick Freeman, who's a professional drummer, says, if you can stop playing music, you probably should.
Yeah, well,
I mean, if you're compelled to do something to this point, like I don't have a customer for this. You know, I'd love to sell it at some point, and today would be great. But
today.
but I don't build these specifically for the money. I build these because I'm compelled to, and once they're there, they're there.
Does the idea bug you or something, and you have to build it? I couldn't help it. It had to come out from somewhere.
On that note, folks.
Well, you know, we are actually kind of out of time. We're really close to being done today, and you know, we're trying to control our time here. I wanted to let you know to watch for some of these incredible art guitar projects that we're working on. This is really where I'm putting my focus these days, into this kind of thing, and collaborating with these great individuals. You can follow the progress of the guitar we're donating for the auction to benefit the kids who are abused and hurt. We'll publish this stuff up on our website. Go to Ribbecke.com. You can see that. Your website is
RobinsonInlays.com, or on Facebook, it's Robinson Custom Inlays.
And of course, there's the great Bobby. What are you giving out? Giving out any information, or is flying below the radar? There you have it, folks. So,
BobbyVega.com, isn't it?
I don't know. I don't keep track of
You got a website.
See?
Somebody else does it for
Somebody
you.
else does it.
See, this guy's liberated
All
from all
Yeah.
this.
Anyway, thank you all.
Yeah, thanks.
See you next time.
Over and out. Every next week.